I'm Mark Halperin.
And I'm John Heilemann, and with all due respect to everyone who thinks they're going to be part of the Bill Simmons bidding war, you're too late. Love doing this show with Bill. All right, happy National Coconut Cream Pie Day, sports fans. In our lineup tonight, liberty, money, and something Keith Olbermann would be proud of. But first, getting pumped up for the Palmetto State. The gigantic South Carolina Freedom Summit is tomorrow. Scott Walker, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Rick Perry, Carly Fiorina, Donald Trump, and more. Mark, you will be there, and we will be streaming all the action on BloombergPolitics.com. My question, who among that cast of stars has the most on the line this weekend?
Well, everybody does, because South Carolina is wide open. The guy I'm watching is Marco Rubio. His team in South Carolina is underrated. It's one of the strongest political teams any candidate's put together in any state. And Rubio, my hunch is, might end up being a better cultural fit and a bigger political force in South Carolina than he is in New Hampshire and Iowa.
You know, I would have said that Marco Rubio was going to be my call, but I always want to try to get in the disagreement zone with you, Mark. So today, I will aver and choose Scott Walker, just because Scott Walker right now, if you had to pick a front runner in the race right now, just on the basis of polling, Scott Walker's still at the head of the field right now. But you can see Marco Rubio coming up fast. Walker has not had a big moment in weeks. I think he's got to try to re-seize the momentum, or he's going to see himself eclipsed by Rubio. And there's always, of course, Jeb Bush hovering in the wings.
Yeah, look, there's another guy who's not going to be in South Carolina besides Jeb Bush, we'll get to in a minute, which is John Kasich. Yeah. He's in Columbus today. We're reporting on BloombergPolitics.com that he's having a big powwow, one of many secret meetings he's had over the last several weeks in Columbus. John Sununu, the former senator, is there. Other big figures in the party and his local Columbus team, and former Congressman Walker from Pennsylvania. They are meeting to do more due diligence about whether Kasich should run. He's skipping this event, but he's going to be at plenty of others.
Well, I got to stick with that. You know, we both think John Kasich could be a big player in this race, and we have an interview coming up with Rick Snyder. Rick Snyder deciding not to run seems to open up the field a lot in terms of Midwestern money and that kind of resume. I would think this would be a lot more tempting for Kasich with Snyder out than it would have been with Snyder in.
No question, and not just Midwestern money, but specifically in Michigan, where there are a lot of big donors.
Right.
Look, as we said, another name missing, probably the biggest one from the Freedom Summit, is John Ellis Bush, the former Florida governor. Instead, is going to be giving a commencement speech at Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia, the school famously founded by Jerry Falwell, and also where Ted Cruz announced he was running for president a couple weeks ago. The setting matters a lot, and so do the words of Bush's speech. He has rehearsed this speech, carefully written it. It's a big one. One of the excerpts released this evening, the advanced excerpts tell you in and of itself how big a deal the Bush people think this is. Bush is going to say, quote, whatever the need, the action, or the injustice, there's no more powerful or liberating influence on this earth than the Christian conscience in action. John, why is this Jeb Bush speech so important to his candidacy?
I want to ask Bill what he thinks about this. Bill, what do you think about this? That's a crucial question. Bill doesn't have a view. Okay, so I'm going to take Bill's proxy and say, you know, we've seen in polling recently, Mark, that John jealous Bush has a problem with conservatives. We know that on a lot of fronts. We've seen it in recent polling. He's got to figure out a way to connect to the conservative base. He's not so far been able to do that, and it's not just a question of Common Core or immigration. It's something deeper. This is a way to potentially open up a kind of visceral connection with the people that make up the core of the Republican base.
The only way he erases in the voters' minds the dominant narrative about him now, which is son of a president, brother of a president, is with the kind of compelling narrative that Bill Clinton had, that George W. Bush had, that Barack Obama had. His most compelling narrative for a lot of his advisors is his faith and how his faith infuses all of his public policy ideas. This speech is going to be a lot about his Christian faith and what role he thinks it plays in the world and connects to his Right to Rise agenda. Watch to see the level of performance. They want him to show his heart. Let's see if he can do it tomorrow.
Well, let me just read another excerpt from the speech here for you to give you a sense of how much he's going into full kind of culture warrior, deep evangelical kind of mode, although he's a Catholic. In works hardly even noticed by the popular culture, so many young Christians today are showing the way, moved not by pity for what is, but by a vision of what can be. For all who would serve the poor and the homeless, you set the standard with your belief that everyone matters. matters, and everyone has the right to rise. That's, as you just mentioned, Mark, linking up his slogan to a deeply kind of Christian conservative message. A lot of conservatives in the party don't think Jeb Bush is a conservative. That could be something Mike Huckabee could have in his speech.
Yeah. Look, in New Hampshire, these themes are not necessarily as big a deal, although they are for some voters. But certainly in Iowa, certainly in South Carolina, Jeb Bush needs to show people, again, not just that he's conservative and not just that his views are informed by faith, but that he's got a personal narrative that they will find compelling. Yeah. And his conversion to Catholicism, how faith has been a big part of his life, is something he's going to have to break through on if he's going to get overcome the narrative of being son of, brother of.
Totally agree, but conservative matters a lot. All right, the live anchored coverage starts at 10 a.m. with Jeb first at Liberty University and then a full day of speeches in South Carolina, all on BloombergPolitics.com. Speaking of Jeb, whose super PAC fundraising has been dwarfing that of his Republican rivals, Hillary Clinton on the other side of the aisle got in on that act this week as she started schmoozing potential donors to her main super PAC, Priorities USA Action. The difference is that, as an announced candidate, Hillary has to be a bit more careful about asking for ginormous checks. On the other hand, the Clintons have never had much problem being fully funded in races they've run. So, Mark, my question to you, between Jeb and Hillary, who's better positioned to be the fundraising king or queen pin of 2016?
Look, she's already raising hard dollars for her own campaign, not the super PAC. Jeb Bush has put that off in part so he could keep raising unbridled the super PAC money. If you believe this race is going to come down, as some do, to Clinton Bush, who can raise more in giant contributions for 2016, not 2015? Jeb Bush still has the advantage of Republican billionaires and multimillionaires are more inclined to write these gigantic checks than the Democrats are. So right now I think Hillary Clinton has got her work cut out for her as she tries to help raise those big checks, even while she's an announced candidate.
I got to say, I think it may be true that Jeb does. Obviously, we know Democrats are loath to give to super PACs, or at least a lot more queasy about it. But in the end, I'm with David Axelrod from 2012 when Mitt Romney raised all that money. In the end, there's just only so much money that the system can absorb effectively. Spending the money effectively is all that really matters. And as we saw there, what mattered was how the Obama campaign spent its money, not who had the most in the end. I think Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton, if they are both the nominees, they will have enough money that money won't matter anymore.
Well, I think it's possible that you could see the Republican side really breaking out. And let's say people start going negative on Hillary Clinton now. She's not going to be in a position to defend herself. People say she doesn't have the nomination fight, and that's better for her. Jeb's got to fight it out with a lot of other Republicans. Could be that there's a lot of Coke money and other money spent against her now, and she's got to start spending down money she'd rather have for next year.
Well, we'll see. Like I say, I mean, there's no doubt. Look, she's going to take it from all sides, but I think a lot of that, and there's going to be, she's going to take it from all sides. I think in the end, I've just never seen a situation, I know you haven't either, where the Clintons have ended up on the short end of a money war. It's just never happened before. It would be shocking if it happened this time.
Yeah. All right. Wake up early on this Sunday, this weekend, for our Bloomberg Politics St. Anselm College poll of New Hampshire voters. A lot of interesting stuff going to come out of that. But now, our nod to Keith Olbermann, who, in the world of sports today, is the worst person in the world. John, your choices: A-Rod, who passed Willie Mays on the home run tally; ESPN President John Skipper, who failed to renew Bill Simmons' contract; or whoever made this horrible video for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Bulls fan? I didn't know you were a Bulls
So
fan.
much to choose from, but John, I asked the non-musical question: who's the worst person in the world?
Well, you're giving me a choice here between a cheater and a scumbag in Alex Rodriguez. A guy who obviously didn't have much patience for some of Bill Simmons' more florid moments, but also, I think, foolish man in John Skipper's case, losing my friend Bill over here, who I'm sure has an opinion about this. He probably thinks Skipper is the biggest fool there. But I got to say, the worst person in the world, those people at the Cleveland Cavaliers. If there's anything that professional sports teams and leagues should be responsive to right now, is questions about sensitivity towards domestic violence. That Cleveland Cavalier video, horrible, qualifies whoever was in charge in Cleveland as the worst person in the world.
Got to go with the video. And you just wonder, in the world of sports, particularly professional sports, how it could be that something like that could get made at a time when, quite rightfully, we've had all this focus on domestic violence. It's insane.
It's insane, but you've got Budweiser putting things on their beer that indicate that kind of are like incitements to date rape right now. So the marketing departments of a lot of big companies, especially at the nexus of alcohol in sports, all need to do a little bit of navel gazing and do some rigorous due diligence.
We don't really have Bill Simmons, despite the cold open. So where do you think he's going to go?
I want him here. I want him bad. I'm going up to see Mike Bloomberg after this show and tell him to write a really, really, really big check to get that man in this chair. Not to displace you, Mark, by the way. We'll add a third chair.
Real Bill Simmons.
I think it'd be great for the three of us to all be out here and do the show.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Coming up, our quasi, every now and then, week in review. But first, a prominent governor and one tough nerd who's just decided that he is not running for president. Michigan's Rick Snyder is here next. You're doing it, Rick Snyder. You're doing it. Ring that bell. The governor of Michigan dinged the sacred stock exchange into existence this morning on Wall Street. Here are three things that we know about Governor Snyder. He loves to water ski, he loves to smoke meat, and he's not running for president. He apparently decided he wouldn't do that after he failed to get a contentious tax measure passed in Michigan. How close did Governor Snyder actually come to getting into the 2016 race? Here to answer that question is an expert on the topic, Michigan Governor Rick Snyder. Governor, nice to see you.
Well, it's great to be with you. I'm glad I had to give you a third thing. You only had two.
Yeah, that's right. That's good. Three is the magic number. Let me let's start off with the most obvious question, which is you decided not to run. A lot of people thought you were about to get in. Why did you decide not to give it a go?
Yeah, if you stop and look at it, John, Michigan's the comeback state, and I'm really proud of that. We've done tremendously well. But I want to make sure the things we've done continue on. And the other thing is we still have some major historic issues that need to be resolved. And so the way I view it is I was elected to be governor of Michigan. Right. And I think it's really important to make sure I do that job right.
Well, I'll get to this in a second. I mean, presumably while you were considering running for president, you were governor of Michigan and that job was important. So I want to get a little bit into the thinking that got you there. But let me just ask you about the tax measure, about Proposition 1. Soundly defeated.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought it would have trouble getting passed. You apparently thought it was going to pass, that it was going to actually be enacted. So what happened there, and how did that play in your thinking about the presidential run?
Well, again, when you look at it, it's like I had proposed various plans to solve the problem, but I wasn't able to get legislative support. So I would say I did this together with the legislature in a very positive way. And from a policy perspective, there are a lot of good things to this plan.
Yeah.
And so when you sign up to be part of a team to do a plan, I want it all out to make sure it happened, and it didn't.
But 24 hours before the vote, did you think it was going to get passed, or did you think you realized it was going to fail?
Well, I'm the guy, I believe in relentless positive action, so I'm always positive. Because, again, that's the way you have to approach these things. And the way I view it is it didn't pass, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't just be relentless in pursuing, a constructive solution. This isn't the first time I've had challenges in office. This is part of the job. Actually, I told my team when I was first running for office, if everything we worked on just worked, it meant we weren't doing our job. Because you have to have the courage to say, if you really want to innovate, make great things happen, you can't just be safe.
Let me ask you one more question, and then I'm going to bring in Mark from Chicago. Let me just talk about the linkage here. You know, the history will show that this ballot initiative, constitutional amendment proposed, went down, and then you decided you weren't going to run. Many people think that there's some connection between those two things, just for the sake of history. Because if you'd gotten into this race, you would have been a real serious contender, and your decision not to run matters. So just take us through that 48 hours, 72 hours in your thinking.
Well, again, having the proposal fail wasn't a part of that consideration. It was really a question of making sure I was looking at the issues that we needed to work on. Again, we still need to solve the transportation issue, but I'm very active on Detroit Public Schools right now. I just did an energy message that we're doing some awesome things for energy and the environment. I'm doing a criminal justice message coming up. We still have many things to work on. The most exciting thing for Michigan's economic future is to bring back the skilled trades. This is a huge national problem in terms of not having enough people with career tech education backgrounds. And so that's a top priority I've had. And I want to make sure that sticks, because literally that can improve the quality of life for tens of thousands of Michiganders, their families, our whole state, and send a message to the nation. This is how you can deal with growing the pie, helping with income disparity, doing good things. So I'm excited about being governor. Hopefully you can feel that energy.
I feel a lot of energy.
Governor, we're excited about you being governor, but we also, as John suggested, like to do the first draft of history here. So I do want to pin you down a bit on your consideration for a presidential run. As from what we've heard, it was much more extensive and much more significant and serious than you've led on in public. So I just want to run you through some of that. It's true that you had a pretty extensive series of meetings about what a presidential campaign would look like, correct?
Well, what I'd say, Mark, let me just sort of encapsulate the whole thing is I did a fair amount of homework. And actually I talked to a number of people that had been involved in previous campaigns I've been part of because I appreciate their thought process and such. But at the same time, I always kept the eye on the ball to make sure we're doing good things in Michigan. So we did.
Right.
I am a good nerd, so I tried to do my homework.
So part of that homework involved figuring out how much money you'd need to raise. We've heard you had a pretty extensive rollout plan, and even we heard that you actually had a tentative date to announce a candidacy on July 7th. Is that true?
No, I view that as speculation at that point, because as a practical matter, I never sat down and said this is the date I'm looking at. I mean, people talk about a lot of things in the process. There may have been people that are trying to give me advice coming up with dates, but as a practical matter, I hadn't picked any date for anything like that because, again, I had to go through the exercise I just did.
Right. So you weren't planning a run in any. You said you were doing your homework, you were doing research, but is it the case that until this week you were inclined to run for president and this week you decided not to, or that's not the case?
Well, what I'd say is this is the week I announced. I made a decision because, again, it's one of those things that in terms of people talking about the subject matter, it was a good way to highlight Michigan. It really brought attention to the state of Michigan when you're going through this exercise.
But Governor, I'm sorry, Governor, if I could try, with all due respect, this is the week you announced it. As John said, this is also the week your efforts to help find a way to pay for roads in Michigan, transportation in Michigan went down. How should we not see there's some linkage there, given that up until this week, until the ballot measure went down, you seem to be moving ahead with fundraising plans, announcement plans, scheduling plans for a presidential campaign? There must be some linkage, it would seem.
Well, again, I wouldn't necessarily draw that conclusion because, again, what it means is I had a whole series of issues I just covered with John that I thought were important issues for Michigan. Added that list is one that might have been otherwise solved, which is the transportation issue. But that's one of several issues that were really part of the consideration.
I'll just try one more time. Why did you announce it this week then?
Well, again, the speculation was actually becoming a distraction from me doing the job as governor of Michigan. Because one thing I don't want people to confuse, because I'd been quite clear, I want to go tell the Michigan story. I think it's a great story of our comeback, and I think it is a model for the country. And I believe we need a problem solver in Washington. So I want to continue that dialogue, but I actually think it has more credibility by just clarifying things to say I'm not running, but I still think there's an important message that went on in Michigan, going on in Michigan, and will continue to be important in I hope, the national dialogue to see what a great place we are and how we can help solve national issues.
So Michigan's going to be a big, important state, as it always is at the presidential level, and now there's a big Republican field, somebody trying to get to be the nominee. When you look at the field, are you, what do you think about that field that exists? And who, eventually someone's going to come and ask you for your support, or probably a lot of people. Do you have any ideas about who you're leaning towards at this point?
That would be premature, because again, I'm just getting over this phase of you guys asking me all the other questions. So let's take a break from that. But as a practical matter, what I would say is the main thing we need, in my view, is we need someone that's going to come solve problems in our country. And this is that whole question. I have my philosophy. I call it relentless positive action. Somebody can call it something else. But don't we need leadership in our country that's about not blaming, not fighting, saying here's the problem, here's common sense solutions, and moving us forward? If you look at Washington, nothing's gotten done hardly. I mean, John, here's the illustration. I show people this. This is the list of Michigan in our first 4 years. Ask yourself the question, what would the list look like for Washington, D.C.?
I know the answer to that question. That would be my empty palm look.
Well, I want to give you one of these because this is the kind of things that happen when people say it's not about fighting and blame, it's about treating people as family.
Is it fair to say that you'd be more inclined, again, not making any commitments, but you think that a governor and the set of skills that a governor has would be better suited to running the country than someone who's been from the legislative background?
Yeah, I think that's clearly true because of the executive experience, the ability to run something. Too often, candidates get picked because of personality, policy, and actually running and being a good manager is critically important.
Governor, as someone who gave serious consideration to running for president, I just want to ask you this. You're not currently thinking about running in 2016. Would you still like to be president of the United States someday?
Well, that's out there a ways. What I would say is I've got until 2018 being governor of Michigan, and after that I'll have to do some career analysis.
That's a very good, very nerdy way to put it. Governor Snyder, thank you for coming on. Thank you for everything. Great to see you here on this very particularly important time in your life. And since you won't be running for president, we assume you'll have plenty of time to go with us on a water skiing vacation and do some smoking of some brisket.
I'm happy to do that with you guys. You're fun.
All right, fantastic. Coming up, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and part of Friday, those are the best days of our lives. With All Due Reflect makes its triumphant return after the break.
Hey, John, I just wanted to say that I'm really sorry I can't be with you in New York today.
Oh, Mark, that's all right. Don't worry about it. It's been such a crazy week. We probably needed to spend some time apart anyway.
There was a time we gave Carly Fiorina a taste of her own medicine.
And that time we wanted to cover Ben Carson, but instead we went to a concert.
You better lose yourself in the music the moment you own it. You better never let it go.
Oh, speaking of concerts, that time we got tickets to Huckaroo.
The heaviest jamming, most ferocious licks, and the wildest riffing.
Our farmers and ranchers provide food and fiber.
That time Haley Barbour got confused about presidential term limits.
I don't think the American people want Obama to have a third term.
And that time the Register's Kathy Abradovich nailed Carly Fiorina.
I had to live on my paycheck.
And how much did you make?
Oh, I don't even remember.
That time we couldn't pronounce the name of Hillary's campaign manager.
Robbie Mook's objections.
Robbie Mook.
Mook, like look.
Like look, book, and took, and crook. No, cook.
That time we fact-checked Hillary's fact-checker.
I guess he's hoping nobody has heard of Senate.gov, the Library of Congress, Project Vote Smart, or Google.
Oh, we've heard of Google, but we've also heard of tax records, and we've also heard of that disclosure agreement.
That time we explained the British elections.
Who will be the leader of the party with the most seats in Parliament to form a coalition government at the request of the Queen to persuade one or more other parties to agree on a platform that can command a majority in the House of Commons?
And that time we channeled Orson Welles in grayscale.
With all due respect to Chris Christie, you're caught in the middle of the biggest showdown in your state since that cylindrical meteorite landed in Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
Mark, looks like you finally got your chance to be on the radio. We'll be right back. Reminding you one more time, Mark is anchoring Jeb Bush and the speeches from other Republicans in South Carolina tomorrow on BloombergPolitics.com starting at 10 a.m.
And a preview for you on Monday in the studio in New York, former Republican strategist, star of TV's The View, and author of the new novel, Madam President, the wonderful Nicole Wallace will join us.
I can't wait for that. Remember, we don't just thrive at 5, we're also great at 8, so you ought to let us set the bar in your DVR. Up next, taking stock and on the radio of Bloomberg Law, I say for you, sayonara.